Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can?
I can, yeah. I'm gonna ask you to turn your, do you not want your video on?
Can you see my video?
No, I cannot.
Okay, let me see. How's that? Is that better?
Hold on, give it just a second. Okay, I see that, oh, okay. Director Frost was on here, but I do not see her anymore. Okay. I'm gonna ask you to start your video. Okay. Did you see something that said, please start video? Lynette, can you hear me? Hello? Uh-oh.
Hi, can you hear me now?
I sure can. I'm gonna click a function that's gonna ask you to start your video. I'm clicking it right now. Did you see anything that came up?
Let me go back to that just one second. For some reason, it worked great yesterday. For some reason, it's not allowing the camera now. So let me see.
I'm gonna click it again just to see.
Can you see me now?
I can't. It shows me that you're not turning. So you should get a notification that's saying host is asking you to start your video.
Yeah, and I say start my video.
Okay.
And it's saying cannot start video. Failed to start the video camera.
Okay.
Select another video camera in settings. Okay, let me try that. Let's see.
I see that Clint has joined us, so I'm gonna push him to panelist so we can see and hear him as well. So I'm gonna let you try to mess around with that a little, okay?
Yeah, perfect. Can you see me now?
No.
Okay. Ugh.
Okay. All right, Clint, hello.
Hello. Hi, Lynette.
Hi, Clint. So weird. Let's see.
Okay. Okay. Well, the good news is we can hear you, Lynette. So that's the good news.
Boy, this is really frustrating. See, you can't see me. Yesterday they could see me just fine.
Was that in meeting or webinar?
I don't know. It was whatever you had set up for me for that committee and board.
Oh, that was the Zoom meeting, yeah.
Okay.
I could try to ask you again.
Yeah, same thing is going on here. Okay.
Well, good news is we can see your name and we can hear you just fine.
Okay. It's like, why did I put on makeup? Yeah.
So just be aware that when we talk right now, everyone that is joining us right now can hear us. Okay, I just want to give everyone that.
Great, thank you.
And just so, Lynette, you asked, and I'm sorry, I did not text you back. I do have Jen's PowerPoint just in case she has technical difficulties. So I'm able to display that if she has any difficulties today.
Great, thank you.
Lynette, do you want to try to hang up and then rejoin?
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'll watch out for your name. Oh, hi, Greg.
Hi.
Greg, you are logged in as Zoom meeting too, so I didn't know who you were. Do you have your own personal account that would say Greg Chu?
I got 2 appointments for this, and this is the one that Lynette sent. So there
No.
was one that you sent too.
Yeah, no, you're clicking the correct link. It's just if you're not logged in as yourself in Zoom, like on zoom.com, it looks like you're still logged in as Zoom meeting too.
Okay.
That's what it's going to show up as. If you want, because I'm going to keep you as an attendee until you're ready, until the presentation starts.
Okay.
So if you don't mind logging out on Zoom of Zoom meeting 2 and just logging in as you, and you could click on this same link that you're clicking the correct link.
Okay, so to get back in, I have to go into where it says the email address and the password, right?
You know what? I'm actually just going to keep you, just to avoid confusion. I'm going to keep you as Zoom meeting 2. I'm just going to bump you back to an attendee, and then I'll bump you back up when it's your turn to present. Does that make sense?
That's fine. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'm going to bump you back, okay?
okay.
Here we go. Okay. All right. Hi, Lynette. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Great, but you still can't see me.
Well, I'm going to ask you to start the video.
Okay.
Okay. Yay!
Me?
We can see you. So exciting.
Good to
Okay,
see
I'm
you.
gonna try to bring some more people over right now. James has joined us. Hi, James.
Hello.
Welcome to the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee.
It's nice to be here. Lynette, I imagine you doing like an underground radio show. You're like broadcasting from London during World War II.
Right? Yeah.
There we go. All right, James, we can see you just fine. I'm going to start bringing over some board members. So remember that everyone can hear us right now. I'm going to start bringing them over right now. So I see the director, Tiksa, has joined us.
Hey,
Hi.
how's it going?
Hello.
Just busy doing deliveries. So, so would I be able to look at the agenda, or would my video go away once I click out?
So your video just went away right now.
Okay. Yeah, it's the same thing that happened to our council meeting last night. I kept on going in and out because I was looking at the agenda on my. But again, you guys don't need to see me. I'm here.
Well, the good thing is we can still hear you.
Yeah, that's all that matters. And then yesterday's meeting, we approved the annual transportation development, for fiscal year 1920. So thank you for the funds that you guys help us out with.
All right, I see Director Frost, so I'm going to go ahead and promote her to panelist, so she'll be joining us in just one moment. There we go.
I'm going to unveil myself if I can get the tape off my computer.
Okay.
I like it. There we go.
There, you get to see my red room.
I've been doing the same thing. I've got a piece of tape I've got to add and remove.
I know.
I'm paranoid.
Every now and then I don't look, well, I don't look that great, but
Sue, how are the county board meetings working in terms of the remote technology?
we're doing most of our board meetings on site, just because there's only 5 of us. It's
You
easy
guys hear
for us
me?
to do that.
Yes, we can.
But a lot of the
Yeah.
other meetings are
I can't hear anybody.
they're going well. I mean, I somehow believe this is going to change the way we do things in the future. I mean, I think they're going very well. But
Good.
how about you guys?
So far, so good.
I mean, I like the online, we don't have to get in our car and drive a half hour to get to the meeting.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of nice.
Get to see Director Stokely's artwork behind him, so it's always good.
Hi, Matt.
I think he mentioned he can't hear us quite yet.
Oh.
I figured out.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Sorry. Time flies when you're having fun.
How many people do we have coming?
This is Lynette. We're expecting all of our committee members. I'm not sure if Directors West or Kennedy or Flores will be able to join us, but we're expecting all the others.
Great.
Lynette, Director Kennedy did say last week when I talked to him that he was planning to be here, so
Okay.
hoping to see him.
Eric, that's an empty conference room behind you.
It sure is, but this was the view from the board meeting we had that was all remote.
Gotcha.
I am in the happiness of my home right now.
Oh, that's your backdrop?
The
Oh.
virtual
Yeah.
backdrop.
How do you
Pretty
do
sneaky.
that? That's
Yeah, see, we can, maybe under other matters, we can
Yeah,
walk
that's
through how you do the virtual
Virtual
background.
backgrounds in your settings.
Oh, you go to backgrounds?
Yeah, it's called virtual backgrounds. So even though you can't travel anywhere, you can travel through your backgrounds.
There you go.
There's mine.
Oh, cool.
I got none. I don't know about everybody else, but I haven't done, oh, Clint, nice.
Better, right?
Feeling calmer already.
Yeah.
I don't know about everybody else, but I've never spent so much time on video conferencing in my life. It's crazy.
I think you're not alone.
I'm on the phone all day. There's a lot going on, a lot of people calling, wondering if they can do it, if they can do that. Challenging times for small businesses.
Oh yeah.
You just gotta adapt. That's all we gotta do.
How are you, Alex?
Good. Just when I'm not working at the Russian, I'm doing deliveries, and if I'm not doing that, I'm at the orchard. So my dad's pretty happy about it. I should be in Anaheim right now for League of Cities, but you know, I'm in orchards and restaurants, so my parents are happy.
Oh, is League of Cities having a conference in
Well,
spite of?
they were supposed to, but now it's all over the same thing, teleconference. They're doing it all online. It's going to be fun doing that with 100 people. And, you know, 90% of them want to talk. So
They have to raise their hand.
So Lynette, we're at 1:30. We've got a few that we're still waiting for.
Yes, we are still waiting for a few, so we don't quite have a quorum yet. We need one more director to join us before we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So everybody, we'll hang on a few more minutes and let others join.
Okay.
I'm going to make a quick announcement that if a director has called in on a cell phone, please hit *9 so I know that that's your number, and I'll promote you to panelist so we can hear you. There we go.
Tim Onderko.
Hi, Tim, and hi, Jill.
Hi. Hi there.
Hey, guys.
Okay, Chair Spokely, we have a quorum whenever you'd like to get started. It's up to you.
Looks like somebody else just joined.
Yep, we have just one more director that joined.
This is Robert from Mileton. Can you hear me?
Hi, Robert.
Okay, just want to know if I'm in.
You're in. You made it.
Thank you.
All righty, Lynette, you wanted to make an announcement before we start?
I do, thank you. Just wanted to let you all know that this meeting is being recorded, as all of our webinars are, and wanted to make an announcement for any members of the public that are participating in this meeting. If you're using your telephone, you can press *9, and that will let us know that your hand is raised and you'd like to make a public comment on an item. I've also been checking my email, and I have not received any public comment through that means yet. And then also, committee members, just wanted to remind you that when you're not speaking, if you could please mute your device, that will keep the outside sounds from interfering with the meeting. Thanks.
I also have a flag to display for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right.
All right, let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would please join me. And nice, there's our flag. Thank you very much. All right, everybody, I pledge allegiance,
To the flag
of the United
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which
to
it
the
stands,
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
Under God,
God, indivisible,
liberty and justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Indivisible, liberty.
Maybe it didn't sound that great, but it was nice to do that. Thank you very much, Lynette.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Probably ought to start with a roll call vote, or excuse me, a roll.
Yes, thank you. Director Flores, it appears he's absent at the moment. Frost?
Here.
Jankovitz?
Here.
Kennedy? Absent New?
Here.
Thank you. Onderko?
Here.
West? Absent Vice Chair Gallardo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tixa?
Here.
And Chair Spokley.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. So just for everybody's sake, because it will catch up with us eventually on this meeting, if you're not speaking, can you please make sure you mute your computer, your phone, whatever, just so we don't start to get the echoing thing happening. Thank you very much. With that, Lynette, did we have anybody for public communication? I think I see some hands up from some of the attendees that are on the call.
Those hands were only for the directors that I promoted. Currently, we do not have any members of the public wishing to make a comment at this moment.
Great, thank you very much. Do any of the directors have any public comment they'd like to mention at this time? All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to our first action item. That's the approval of minutes from the March 5th, 2020 meeting. Lynette?
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve that item?
So move. Here.
Second.
Motion and a second. And Lynette, I think you told me that because we're doing it online, we need to do a roll call vote for this?
Yes, that's right. So if you just bear with me, we'll run through the roll call quickly. If you can just indicate yes or no for your vote. Director Flores, absent. Frost?
Yes.
Jankovitz?
Yes.
Kennedy, it appears is still absent. New?
Yes.
Onderko? Director Onderko, are you there? Okay. West is absent. Vice Chair Gallardo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tixa?
Yes.
And Chair Spokley?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion
Did
carries.
you have Underco on there? Sorry.
Director Onderko, do you vote? How do you vote on the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you, everybody. Let's move right along to item number 2. Request for proposal, employment inventory and mapping to support regional planning efforts. Is Bruce on the call?
I'm going to bring him over right now.
Thank you. Good morning, Bruce, or good afternoon, Bruce.
Good morning, or good afternoon, yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Bruce.
Yeah, sorry, it just sort of dropped. I'm gonna start my video.
We can see you, thank
Everybody
you.
see me here?
We got you.
Hope you're all in good health and adjusting to the shelter in place gracefully. It's been definitely a learning experience, just like Director Frost said earlier. So this item is about a major project that we undertake every 4 years, and that is inventorying business establishments and jobs in our region. SACOG has done this every 4 years since the 1990s. It's key to the 4-year cycle of the MTP SDS updates. And to give you a sense of scale, there are over 100,000 business establishments in our region and providing about 1 million jobs, at least prior to all this COVID-19 stuff happening. The employment inventory is a detailed snapshot of those businesses and the jobs that they provide in our region. SACOG tracks on an annual basis aggregate employment, that is like at a county level. But the employment inventory is done every 4 years, and it gets to a much more detailed understanding of spatial distribution of jobs in the region. And then the inventory is then used to reestablish the base year of jobs for our forecasting work, and that ends up coming to you and to your local staff in the work that we do related to the MTP and the SCS updates. This item is really about SACOG taking stock of how we do the employment inventory. We have used SACOG staff to do that work in the past. The landscape of data is changing year by year. There's more free sources of data out there. There's more vendors selling us data, and then there's vendors selling data services. This RFP puts out into the world a request to contractors to help us with this important work and to do it more cost effectively than we've done it in the past. So we're asking for new approaches to developing the employment inventory, and we're also asking for cost proposals to do the work from contractors. The proposals that we receive will help us make some choices about what to do next on this project. And depending on the quality of the proposals and the proposed costs that we get, we may be back in front of you again, recommending selection of a contractor and requesting authority to enter a contract. All we're asking for at this point is your permission to send out that request into the world to get the process started. That's all I had, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Real quick, before I go to the rest of the committee, normally I'm accustomed to seeing kind of a range in as far as budget might look like, and I didn't see it in your staff report. Is 4 years ago, what was our budget for this effort when we undertook it?
Yeah, and there is some information on the staff report. Like I said in my presentation, we've done that normally through staff work, and it's when you add up all the staff time that's put into it, it's roughly a year of staff time, and that's done every 4 years. We did not put this item out with a budget in it. We really are looking for proposals that hopefully reduce the cost that we spend on this. And we're not trying to telegraph at this moment what we have in the way of an expectation or a budget for the work. We're looking for proposals from vendors, and we're hoping that we can get a really low cost proposal to do this.
Okay, got it. And one other quick question, the time frame, obviously fairly interesting given what's going on with our economy today. You mentioned a year-long process. Is the effects that we're seeing right now on due to the pandemic going to skew your poll results? Or I guess because it's happening, what's your schedule for this? Is it next year, or are you going to start at mid-year this year and go until mid-year next year? What's your anticipated schedule for this work?
Yeah, so like if based on how we've done the work in the past, we would do one buy of data roughly in June or July of this year, and that would give us a start of 2020 portrait list of establishments. We do a huge amount of work from that raw list to verify employment for establishments that are really hard to survey or hard to get information from that. And that's what most of the staff work is verifying locations and verifying jobs numbers for different sectors of the employment. It's a good question as to what does an inventory for 2020 really mean, given the shock to the economy that's happened. And we are going to be, I guarantee you that we're already thinking about how are we going to measure the comeback once things start to return to normal, and I'm putting normal in some air quotes there because we don't really know what that comeback will look like. But the process that we go through will probably start the same. It's just the impact of the COVID-19 shock to the economy and how quickly we come back is something we're going to have to now move forward. It may be that we want to, and depending on the schedule for the plan update, we may want to do something like start the whole process in 2021 rather than 2020. But I think we're going to have to be flexible and adaptable moving forward, Director Spokley.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Do any other directors have any questions before we open it up to any public comments? Director Frost.
Well, my first question was the same as yours, Director Spokley, and it was around the timing. I was curious to know, is this something we're required to do every 4 years? Is there a reason for the 4-year timeline, and is there a way that we can postpone it? You guys already hit really on, I think a lot of small businesses, if they're closed for over a week, they can't come back. So I think there's going to be on the landscape, and for us to go to the effort now could potentially be a waste of energy and money, when I kind of wonder if we should wait and until the dust settles a little after we come back.
I think that's probably going to be the course that we take, and there's nothing in the action that you're taking now that requires us to start at this moment in time. I do agree with you, and I think it's a good point that we should not be doing any survey work at this exact moment. And one option is to wait until things kind of come back and settle out a little bit before we actually initiate the work. What we're looking for right now is what's the landscape of vendors out there that provide this service, and could it be more cost effective to use them? If we decide to postpone that and do, say, a 2021 inventory instead of a 2020 inventory, which makes good sense at this moment in time for sure, there's nothing in the action that you're taking today that would prevent us from doing that, and we definitely are open to doing that. We don't want to waste the time and effort in this effort for sure.
Is there a difference between, I mean, if we did an RFP versus RFI, I mean, just to kind of, because so much could change by 2021.
Very good point, and we may want to delay the actual release of the RFP to do that. At this point, I think we're assuming that some of the vendors will be there regardless of what happens over the next couple of months. That said, part of what we're doing now is finding out what that landscape looks like now and seeing if there's a way to move forward, at least on planning for doing this work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Frost. Any other directors have questions for Bruce? Okay, hearing none. Do Lynette?
Oh, I'm just going to say, my thought is we should delay it, or else do just, I don't have a problem with getting a feel for, but to go out with an RFP, that's, you have a job for them that they're responding to. That seems a little soon for that, in my opinion. Sorry, that's, I guess.
Duly noted, thank you.
Okay, hearing no other comments from directors. Lynette, do we have any attendants on the line that want to speak on this matter?
I'm not showing any public comment in my email. Renee, do you see any hands raised from the public?
No, currently there is no hands raised and no public comment in the chat.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the directors for discussion.
Chair Spokley, on Durko here.
Go ahead.
Hi there. I absolutely respect everybody's position on this item. I think, you know, at some point we're going to have to have a larger conversation about all of the things that we have in the bucket of planning. And, you know, because of the recent outcomes and the effects of what we're dealing with right now. But I think that at this point, I think it's important to continue to move forward and with the things that are in front of us right now until that discussion is had and the board and staff have an opportunity to recharter our efforts. And so I'm supportive of staff recommendation here and moving forward with RFP. It doesn't mean we have to settle with anything. But I think we still need to be rowing forward with all the things that we're supposed to be doing from a compliance standpoint and all the other mandates that we have by the state and the federal government. So while I understand where Director Frost is coming from, I would just say that let's table the let's set a goal for ourselves that we should have a broader conversation about everything that we're doing as a board. That's my position. If that makes any sense. Thank you, Chair.
Dr. Sperling, you're on mute. And
I think
sorry.
he's me. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn.
Go ahead, Director Frost. Sorry about that.
I just want to ask a question. When we go out for an RFP, is there a timeline? Do we have to have a job that we fulfill? I guess I was under the impression if we went out for an RFP, we then are on a path to fulfilling something in a certain timeline. Is that true, or what is that timeline?
We have the right, I guess, the option to reject all bids for sure. And I do think, piling on to what Director Ondurka was saying, our feeling is we should move forward with this, and that's why the staff recommendation is set the way it is. There is nothing that commits us to doing that, and we would be coming back to you if there was a significant cost that was related to this. So yeah, I do think that there is a place for that larger dialogue on how all the different things that we have on the planning, on our planning, in terms of our planning agenda, are affected by this. And I know there's different ideas about what the time frame for our next plan update would be. Assuming we're doing a 4-year update, this would be a good thing to start. And again, there's nothing that obliges us to accept any of the proposals. We can reject them all. We can choose one and negotiate with them. And so we have, it's not like we're closing off our options, Director Frost.
So I've got a slightly different take on our current environment that I'd like to share. I mean, obviously we're experiencing something that we've never seen before. I think that we're all hopeful that this virus is a one-off thing, but there's a high possibility that this could be a seasonal thing. And to get an understanding of what our business, local business impacts have been, I think is very valuable. So again, I'm not sure how that plays into the overarching purpose of this survey, but I, for one, think that doing polling, mid-summer to see what the impacts were. We're in my little jurisdiction, we're talking with business owners, and we're seeing roughly a third of them are not going to come back after this. So that will be devastating for my little town. And I'm not the only one. Everybody's in that same boat. So while I appreciate Director Frost's concern about putting out an RFP with maybe the thought that there's no intention of us moving forward, I think there's value in us moving forward with these types of surveys. Again, I know it's not necessarily the direct purpose of this effort, but I think I heard you, Bruce, mention that there's different buys of data, if I'm using the right terms there. And I would like to see something, 2 or 3 months after this is all behind us, to see what impact it has had on our businesses. Again, not the purpose of the data that you're collecting, but I think anecdotally it'll tell us a very interesting story about what the impacts of this thing are, and monitoring it as businesses begin to recover, the economy gets going again. Do we have any other comments from other directors? Or do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to. or second it if Tim wants to make the motion.
Director Underko, do you want to make a motion?
I'm having, sorry, just cutting in and out. So I'm hearing pieces of things. So I'll make the motion to move the item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lynette, you want to take roll for us?
Yes, thank you. Director Flores? I think he's still absent. Frost?
Here, aye.
You. Jankovich?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Aye.
New?
Yes.
Onderko?
Aye.
West? I think he's still absent. Vice Chair Gallardo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tixa?
Yes.
And Chair Spokely?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next, we're moving on to our informational items. Item number 3 is an update on Rural Main Street's Technical Assistance Program.
I am bringing Greg Chu in currently.
Great.
I'll be there in just a second. So as soon as my video comes on. Renee, are you putting my video on?
Yeah, I'm currently trying to. Just give me a second. Thank you.
We're all certainly learning patience with all of this technology, aren't we?
Okay, well maybe
I miss seeing each and every one of your faces at board meetings, by the way. I really do miss the person-to-person contact.
Okay, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here, Greg.
Okay, well I will go ahead and just talk, and if the video comes on, it comes on. Again, Greg Chu. So this item's been before the committee and the board before. About a year ago or so, we received a grant from Caltrans to provide some technical assistance to give specifically to our rural communities on somehow revitalizing their Main Street corridors. So what we did, what we're doing with the money is we went out and put an RFP out, hired 3 consultants that offered different skill sets. These 3 consultants were selected by jurisdictions that are participating in this program. And then each jurisdiction that is participating would receive about $20,000 worth of services that the consultants can provide that somehow revitalizes their main streets. The staff report talks about the 10 jurisdictions that are participating. We selected those if they were part of Civic Lab and their rural community, then they're selected, as well as jurisdictions that have, we contacted all jurisdictions when we were writing the grant. We asked for those rural communities if they had something specific where we could plug in a consultant for about $20,000 worth of services. So the 10 that we have identified in the staff report identifies specifically what we've got going on. But generally speaking, about half the jurisdictions are looking for something to do with their physical streetscape, whereby they would like some assistance in either the redesign of their streetscape or something to physically improve it, whether or not, and the services that we'd be providing with the consultants is either some form of public education and public input, plus some design work or some very specific technical assistance on that. And then the other half of the jurisdictions are looking for ways to help their business community. And that could be in terms of planning, coordination, strategic planning and marketing. And those jurisdictions are all will be receiving some sort of public education, a public workshop, as well as assistance from our specialty area consultants. Our consultants, we have 3 of them. We have Sibylis Consultants, which is Michelle Reeves out of Portland. She's worked in a number of our communities on economic development and revitalization. We also have Robert Liberty, who's well known in planning and has helped a number of jurisdictions in our region, and the Local Government Commission, a local national nonprofit, but based here in Sacramento. So with that, again, the report identifies specifically what we're doing in each community, and periodically we will come back and update the committee on what's going on. The funds do need to be used by February of next year, and we're hoping that the consultant work will be wrapped up by the end of this calendar year. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions. Director Frost.
There I go. Not unmuting again. Sorry about that. Greg, thank you for the presentation. Quick question. The $275,000 in grant funds, did I hear you mention that's going to be equally distributed to the participants? Is that the idea, 20,000 or so a piece?
Yes, roughly. Yes. We'll try to keep it equal. Depends on what they're specifically asking and then what the consultants come back with as far as proposal. We've been going back and forth with all 10 of them to make sure we're proposing something that they want and the consultants can do within that price range. The funds also are used to pay for SACOG staff time as well.
Gotcha.
SACOG is also matching funds as well. So that's why we have to figure out exactly what each jurisdiction is looking for.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other directors have questions for Greg? Director Frost.
Greg, I was wondering when we did this in the past with Michelle, who was amazing and inspirational, and then it kind of, after she left, it kind of fizzled out over time. And I think it was good what happened. I think the question I have, it relates to the takeaway, like with the PBID. I'm thinking about my district, sorry guys, but I'm thinking about all these. Will they walk away with a plan that's in writing, or is this just a workshop that gives them ideas about how to make a plan? And then on the, visioning technical assistance for commercial corridors, will this actually update their specific plan and hone in on some of the details that are not there now, which keeps them from being competitive for funding? Or will this be just a public workshop to just get a feel for what the community would like to see? I'm just wondering what is the deliverable?
A good question. So in Orangevale, what we're doing there is we're doing a series of 3 workshops to give the tools to the business and property owners in the chamber. So really good understanding of what's going on as far as land use and what we're trying to do to revitalize the streetscape and housing. Those are the three educational workshops. We're intentionally spanning them out so that there's kind of time to digest them, think about them, talk about them. And then at the end of that, $20,000 doesn't go a long ways, but what we're trying to do is at the end of that, give both the county staff as well as anybody who's involved with, in this case, Orangevale, information specifically on what the challenges are and how to focus and how to strategize their, if they were to go forward with the grant. We're familiar with the grant that the county submitted on behalf of the Orangevale community in the past. We have some very specific comments to give and ways that the community and if the county were to apply again, how it could be much more competitive with really specific things. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources to provide the community to write the grant for them or to give them specific graphics or whatever, but we are giving advice on for that, and with the county staff participating, we hope they can take it and run from there. In the case of Antelope, what we're doing is we're working with that business improvement district, and they've changed over time. We originally looked at some things about looking at grants and looking at ways to make the community more walkable. They've changed since this pandemic has started. They've changed course a little bit and said, what do we need to do to survive as soon as we return back to normal, normal in air quotes. But what sort of things do they need to do to fortify themselves? So they're less looking at kind of streetscape improvements and more on just what are they going to do to survive as a business community.
Thank you.
Any other questions from directors? Director Gallardo.
Yeah, the question I just have is on the grants, are we certain the communities that are getting these are committed to doing the project once they get the planning done?
Well, we've been working with these communities for the last couple of years for various different reasons. Certainly, all of them we felt were committed to doing it. Otherwise, we've been working on other efforts. So we felt like there was momentum. And for that reason, that's why these communities were selected. And half of them are from the Civic Lab program. So they've already spent the better part of a year committing a lot of time, resources, and and developing plans. So we're trying to help them get kind of that next step.
And I think maybe a check-in to make sure, because we're under such a different time right now. I just want to make sure that we don't invest in the planning if it's not something they're going to be able to accomplish.
Thank you. Any other directors with comments? Director Frost and then Director Tixa.
I just wanted to let Director Gallardo know that I can tell you, like in Orangevale, they're having some great progress with doing their own P-bid after they saw what happened in Antelope. And there is a little fire started there. So there's a lot of community and business around it. So I know they'll be really excited about any help they can get, and they'll continue work. There are leaders there that will continue to work it. But I know for things like this, that's the hard part. Is it's so inspiring at the moment, and then keeping it moving forward I think it requires for all these jurisdictions that the local jurisdictions send staff along and that all of us work together to keep the momentum going after the visionaries and the experts are gone. I really, because we've been through this, and I respect your question because it's a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tixa.
Yeah, so my question is that there's still, I'm trying to remember if there's still 2 more years of this program, correct? That this is supposed to be a multi-year program?
Yeah, we got off to a later start. The grant ends February of 2021. So we've got basically 10 months or so to go. And then with the virus going around, we've had the things that were going to happen earlier are being moved back. And anywhere where we can do virtual opportunities, we'll do that, but many of the activities are in person.
The reason why I'm asking, so to apply for a grant next year, we can do it now, because my sense in our community, because of the highway project, is going to start in May. I mean, hopefully it starts, in May, that it's a 2-year process. So a lot of the business owners along the highway project, they want to wait and see how their business is going to look out before they invest into any new development or any new planning for their businesses. So I'm hoping that this grant opportunity is still there within the next 2 years, or should we apply now for future planning?
I'll be glad to talk with you offline and some of the city staff.
Okay.
and we can discuss that. But for this particular grant, it ends in February. But there are other opportunities later, or there might be a possibility now. So we can talk offline.
All right, thank you. That's all my question.
Perfect. Any other questions from the directors? Do we have anybody in attendance that would like to speak? Any members from the public that would like to speak on this item? I'm seeing none. All right, that was just an informational item. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Greg. Our next item is item number 4, Green Means Go, a place-based investment strategy. Jennifer looks like she's got this one.
Yep, I'm going to bring her over as a panelist currently.
We hope.
Yeah, hopefully.
Chair Spokley and members of the committee, if while Renee's bringing her over virtually, if I could frame this up a little bit for you, because I think as we've talked about with some of you, this is an important item. It may seem, it's very similar, I think, to the last discussion that you just had. It may seem, as you hear us talk about this, that the concept of a 20-year time frame for the sustainable community strategy and the goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled or greenhouse gas emissions kind of pales in comparison right now with the economic impacts of what all of our communities are feeling and will feel probably even more so. But I just wanted to tee this up by saying we actually think this concept of green zones is as timely as ever, in part because we're trying to do a bottom-up strategy to have your local jurisdictions identify places that are really ready for stimulus dollars, recovery dollars, Green Means Go dollars if we can still get them. So I just wanted to say that up front before we get into this item, and we've done some work, and Jennifer's done some great work on this, but just to tee that up for all of you. So I see Jennifer.
I see Jennifer as well. Thank you, James, for those words. Jennifer?
Hi, thanks. I'm gonna try to share my screen so you can see the PowerPoint, and we'll see how this goes.
It's gonna go perfectly. There it is.
And it's, let's see, start. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I am here to talk about Green Means Go, more specifically the green zones. On the left side of the screen, you can see the high-level talking points that we all know well about Green Means Go. But on the right, I've listed just a few questions for us to really dig into today. Today's presentation is about details, so fair warning, the presentation is like 20 minutes long. I will pause for questions, and so the item overall might go over the 30-minute estimate, but for sure won't be much longer than that. But my hope today is that we can start to use today to build a greater understanding of Green Means Go and why these green zones will be so critical. Because you'll be talking about them a lot in the coming months, and we'll be asking you to make some policy decisions about these green zones so that we can keep the ball moving forward with this strategy. So I'll start by just talking about what's coming up next. This draft schedule was included in your staff report as attachment C. It outlines a very high-level timeline for a locally led nomination process of the green zones. We're hoping to work with you and your staff to identify and adopt the green zones by the end of this year. That might seem like a long lead time, but we really want this to be a very collaborative process and heavily led by the local jurisdictions. So we want to make sure we're building in the time for that. And although today the discussion is pretty focused on green zones in service of Green Means Go, this idea of a place-based investment strategy, even with our own funding, is an option you're going to be hearing about in the coming months. So we think, as James was saying, these green zones do have future funding opportunities that could exist beyond Green Means Go. So I'm gonna As we start the process for establishing green zones, we do want your input. These are just a few of the topics we're going to cover today, and I'll repeat this slide at the end of the presentation as well, but I just wanted it here to sort of help frame you or help frame the discussion today as I move through the presentation. Quickly, brief history on how did we get here with Green Means Go. You'll remember in 2018, at the onset of our last MTP update, the Air Resources Board set our greenhouse gas target at 19%, and you'll all recall that infamous asterisk that came with it, which really was about directing us to outline a program that said, what is it that we need in order to achieve that target, and how could the state help us? So what does our region need to achieve that target? Well, a significant percentage of our target is achieved because of the land use assumptions in the MTP. Specifically, about 65% of the housing growth and 84% of the jobs are assumed to be in infill areas. And we know that that's ambitious. So what we need is help achieving that. So supporting infill development quickly became our Green Means Go strategy. In Green Means Go, we're focused on supporting infill in 3 ways, right? First, by accelerating the actual infill development, and then complementing that growth with new travel options like transit or walking and biking, new mobility options, and finally with electric vehicle charging infrastructure and programs. I'll come back to this slide in just a couple of minutes and go over what an example green zone and an example project might look like. But first I wanted to divert a little bit just to talk about what is infill. Infill is one of those planning terms that's used a lot, and it has many different definitions. So I want to make sure we're all using the same understanding as we go through the rest of the discussion today. For purposes of Green Means Go, we look to our MTP-SCS community type map. On this map, the red and the gray areas are really what we're referring to as the infill areas. It's, you guys have seen this map a lot, but it's been a while, and certainly our attention has been with much more pressing things lately. So I'm going to very just quickly reorient us to this map so that I can get to a more better description of that infill definition that we're talking about. In the green of this map are our region's agricultural and natural resource lands. These lands are highly productive today, bringing a lot of environmental and economic benefit to our region. And we assume they largely remain that way in the future. Next, we have our rural residential communities. These are predominantly rural areas where you have homes on very large lot sizes. The roads are a little bit more of a dispersed rural pattern, often no sidewalks. If there's transit, it's probably like a dial-a-ride service. And then we have the developing communities. These are essentially, generally speaking, larger master plan areas that are either building today but are not yet built out, or in some instances they haven't even started building, but we think they will be partially built by 2040. And then the gray areas of this map are the established communities. They're called this because although they do have a lot of potential infill for infill growth in these areas, they feel fairly built today. This is where most of the region's residents live today. They have a mix of housing and employment. Many have bus service, but transit, walk, bike options are going to vary. They just are more present in these areas. And then the red are the center and corridors that sort of run in and throughout those established communities. They're typically the more dense part of the particular community they're in. So the centers and corridors, it is downtown Sacramento, but it's also historic downtowns and main streets and commercial corridors and transit centers. Often these areas have a linear or gridded street pattern, even if it's in a small area. the uses are closer together. Therefore, they usually offer the most transportation choices within their respective communities as well. So it's these center corridor and established communities that make up the infill areas that we're talking about. It's important, I think, to note also that even though I described very high level the urban form and the characteristic of these areas, these are based on your local plans and policies. Your general plans, specific plans, corridor plans, all have informed the look of this map more than anything else. But these infill areas are the areas that we're talking about with Green Means Go, and in the MTP forecast where that 64% of the new housing, 84% of the new jobs are assumed. So the basic strategy with Green Means Go is to have a program that will help us actually realize that level of infill development, because it's that level of infill development that is getting us to our greenhouse gas reduction target, or one of the key components of it anyway, as well as many of the other performance outcomes of our plan. I'm gonna pause and make sure my video is going okay, and if there's any questions, and then I'll move on to a little bit more on Green Means Go.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any questions from any of our directors? I'm not hearing any. I've got some questions for you, Jennifer, but I think I'll just wait till the end to ask them.
Okay, I'll keep going then. So as we developed, as we were developing the Green Means Go and that concept, we met with developers, city managers, planners, economic development staff, and we were asking this question about what are the barriers to getting this level of infill happening in our region, and cost and risk have come up over and over again. These are just some of the broad categories that came up, sort of contributing to that cost and risk. All of these things likely need to be addressed for infill development to truly be accelerated. But the utility needs, such as the water and the sewer infrastructure upgrades, really started to emerge. Some of the other barriers we heard could be potentially, at least partially, addressed through policy change. Some have other existing funding channel options. And frankly, some are so big, they're statewide issues. They're not specific to our region. But this water and infrastructure barrier that we heard a lot about was an interesting one, because it doesn't have a lot of funding sources going to that type of upgrade, but that type of investment in a corridor or a community can really go a long way to reducing the cost and the risk of an infill project, or of really unlocking that entire area for much more infill potential. So that's why with Green Means Go, we're really calling it this place-based investment strategy, because you can't change a corridor like this, the one in the photo, without really targeting that investment. So we're talking about targeted investment in a specific place or community to achieve your goals. And from the Green Means Go perspective, the place we're talking about are the green zones in the infill areas. And those would be identified by your staff through a local nomination process. The goal is to reduce GHG, but you all know it's so much more than that. It's housing development and economic activity and reducing vehicle trips, reducing congestion. And the target investment we're talking about is really that first investment need of the area to be developed, like something like the water and the sewer infrastructure that's underlying, and then layering on the additional investments in transportation choice, electric vehicles. This idea of a place-based investment strategy is something that Bay Area, our regional counterparts, MTC in the Bay Area, use. They have a priority development area program, and we're hoping they'll come to the board in April and do a board workshop around their program and what's happening with that. But you can see like the federal opportunity zones are a somewhat of a version of a place-based investment strategy. Some of the state grants like infill infrastructure and the transit-oriented development housing grants. There's some statewide grants that have at least a place-based component to the investment strategy of those grants. So I want to give you one example of what a green zone might look like and what a project might look like, just so we can kind of put this all a little bit together. This is a potential example green zone in North Watt in Sacramento County, North Watt corridor in Sacramento County. And what this would look like is, first, the green zone itself would be nominated or established by the jurisdiction nominating it. And then you think about what are the needs of the corridor to really unlock new infill growth potential. And so in this area, they do have significant water and sewer improvements needed. And then once you do those, then you have some growth starting, then maybe you partner with RT to extend bus rapid transit up Watt to the area. And then maybe you can do EV charging infrastructure or a car share program to help electrify some of the remaining trips. But in this example, more than the projects, I want to focus on the green zone itself, the example green zone itself. This only works if the county has policies and plans for revitalizing this area and they're planning for a significant amount of new growth, which they are. But the point is that there's that necessary alignment between what we're trying to do with Green Means Go and what the local agency is wanting to do for that area. So it's going to be really critical to the success of Green Means Go that we have this sort of locally led approach to identifying the green zones, as well as that sort of local policy match that we've been able to align these things. And if we are successful, we can transform places from this to this. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to be a slower build. So we have to remember that, especially when we're thinking about where the green zones are and what they are. Okay, I have about 3 more slides on infill, and then I have a couple of slides on VMT, but I want to pause here to see if there's any questions on anything I've talked about so far.
Do we have any questions from any of the other directors? Now's probably a good time for me to ask my questions. You highlighted some of the infrastructure challenges for that infill development generally faces. Sewer and water were obviously at the top of the list, but there's lots of other infrastructure challenges that infill development will face. Some of those corridors you showed have overhead power, cable, all of the dry utilities, we call it, are overhead on poles. Many of our jurisdictions have requirements that if you go and do an infill project, you're forced to underground facilities, and sometimes at great cost, particularly if you're talking about higher voltage power, 69 kV, for example. Well, that's not necessarily required to be undergrounded. All of the other costs associated with undergrounding, lower voltage, and different things really can add up. How much focus has been placed on items other than sewer and water as far as the infrastructure to support densification and these types of infill developments?
Yeah, that's a good question. We heard a lot of different things, and when we were first talking about Green Means Go, even a year ago when I met with most of your jurisdictions, sort of alerting them to this and starting to talk about example projects, we were talking about it a lot more broadly. A lot of different things that we have since sort of narrowed in on this water and sewer, but I don't think that's to say that will be the only fundable project type out of Green Means Go. I'm gonna probably ask James or Christina to really jump in because they've been having much more of those conversations and thought, but I think you raise a good point. I don't want to speak out of turn, but it seems like that's the type of thing that can benefit an entire corridor that you're talking about, right? It helps the entire corridor. It would relieve burden from more than just a single project by doing that. So it seems in line with what we've been thinking about, but we have been heavily using water and sewer as the main example. James, do you want to clarify or correct?
Well, let me finish my point real quick. I don't disagree that water and sewer are probably the biggest challenges that infill redevelopment will face. The thing that I guess I'm getting to, and I saw that a portion on your chart that affects the ability to do this infill stuff was the CEQA process. There are all kinds of state and local regulations that I think are going to be they're going to impede the ability of these infill projects to come to fruition. So it's probably collectively covered under that CEQA as a broad overview. But there are little things like water quality requirements and LID requirements, and all of those are required on any infill development that you do. They take up a lot of land and a lot of money to implement on projects. So that whole regulation burden, I think, is going to be an impediment to seeing some of this stuff actually happen.
Chair Spokley, this is James. I certainly, we appreciate that comment. You know, while it has been an uphill climb to try to figure out if we can kind of broaden the ability for some kind of CEQA streamlining on some of these projects, it is top of mind for us. And of course, it comes from a lot of your staff in the local governments. You know, we're hoping, and who knows in terms of the next few months in the legislature as we go in terms of recovery and trying to get projects to get accelerated, right? That is what we're trying to play on with this whole notion of Green Means Go, is accelerating projects. So we keep that top of mind. I just want to clarify for all of the committee, your point's well taken. You know, we're trying to use the water and sewer because we've actually heard from a lot of your jurisdictions that is an impediment. It's not the only set of impediments, right? We've had very good conversations in Sacramento County with SMUD in terms of what they might be able to do to also incentivize, remove some kind of barriers around utility improvements on some of these infill sites. So we don't want to make it sound like it's all just water and sewer, but those are some of the bigger ticket items that we believe right now are being put on the backs of the developers, that if we could take those off and actually finance it or fund it somehow through Green Means Go, it would spark a lot more of the infill, perhaps even in the recovery phase in the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get into infill just a little bit more. Again, this is the map that we were looking at before, but we've just simplified it. So the red centers and corridors and the gray established are just being shown together so you can see it a little bit more easily. But what you can see is that every jurisdiction has infill areas. The amount of areas and the size is going to vary, but when we look at the map this way, every jurisdiction has infill opportunity. And in fact, when we look at each jurisdiction and what % of their overall growth in the MTP is assumed to be in their infill areas, most jurisdictions have a lot of their growth happening in these infill areas. But that doesn't mean that there's high levels of infill everywhere, right? High density is not just sprouting up all over the map, and we don't even mean high density when we're talking infill, right? It's the development that fits in with your community. And this isn't a perfect map for showing it, but the idea here is that there's going to be some areas in the infill envelope that we've created, there's going to be some areas like the pink and the yellow that do have a more concentrated amount of infill growth happening. And that's the point I wanted to make, is that there are there's lots of infill places in our region, but it's going to be happening at varying levels of planned growth. They have varying levels of planned growth. I'm going to pivot into VMT because it's important to understand that reducing VMT is the main proxy for how we reduce our greenhouse gas reduction, how we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also sometimes a good proxy for many of the other outcomes that we have in the plan. So this idea of how does infill growth lead to lower VMT? Well, it's important to note that with growth and you get more people in an area, the total VMT is probably going to go up, but you can see a VMT reduction per capita. And that's what we're really talking about, is personal VMT going down as you add more people. And what this slide is trying to show is VMT is and often reduced when you do have a density of things. Things are closer by each other. When you have a mix of uses so that origins and destinations are nearby. Demographic changes, there's a lot that go into that, but at a very high level, older adults and young children are not driving, or they're driving less, and so that's helpful in reducing VMT. When the streets are actually well designed and connected, you get a lot more walking and biking and the active transportation. When there's more uses near transit, transit can be more productive and serve more people. And then there's what we often refer to as the transportation demand management bucket, with pricing and parking strategies, carpool options, sort of shared mobility options. But the idea is that you do one or hopefully many of these things combined, they will reduce VMT. And these characteristics are more present in infill areas. By the fact that they're more developed, they just have a more density of people and things. They're more accessible, they're more connected. And so that's how we get from that connection of infill growth actually contributing to a reduction in per capita VMT. Just like infill, you can look at VMT in many different ways. Today, I'm just going to talk about two. First this is our 2040 vehicle miles traveled per capita map, straight out of the MTP, but I did sort of clip it to the infill areas so we could see it a little bit more clearly. Just to orient you quickly, the yellow on the map are the areas of roughly regional average VMT per capita. And then as you move into the shades of green, those are areas with lower than average VMT per capita. And as we're talking about VMT, that's a benefit, right? So the lowering of the VMT is a better VMT metric. And then as you move into the orange and the red, those are areas with higher than regional average VMT in 2040. But there's a second way of looking at VMT, and that's change in VMT. So maybe there are areas that are not low VMT today, and maybe they're not low VMT in the future, but they are lowering their VMT between today and the future as growth is being added. So this map, I simplified it, but there's sort of a lot underlying it. It's a little complicated. It's showing the areas where VMT is either low and or decreasing between 2016 and 2040. That's the green. And then areas where it's increasing between today and 2040, which are the orange. And then there's this blue category of the areas that really have this large swing, communities that are higher than average VMT per capita today, but by 2040, with their growth, move into a lower than average VMT per capita. Now that if you change the scale of this map or you use something different than hex geography, it's going to look a little bit different. So I don't want to get too focused on where are the areas with the biggest change. I mostly just wanted to illustrate it's another way of thinking about VMT, right? You can look at today, you can look at the end state in 2040, but you can also look at where are these reductions happening today, and when you or where's their VMT decreasing, regardless of where they start and end, that over time it is moving in the direction of decreasing. And that's a lot having to do with the table we just looked at, right? The more things, the more mix of use, the better jobs housing balance you have. Those are all going to contribute to lowering the VMT of any of the communities here. So just like the infill maps, there's a number of ways to look at these, and we just wanted to provide you some of these ideas to get you thinking as we talk about the green zones and how do we shape the green zones. And I'll remind you that's timely because we will be coming back to the committee, hopefully with a draft framework for some guidelines around the green zones that we can then start that locally led process to get green zones identified and nominated by the end of the year. So today we really just wanted to foster this discussion around what are policy considerations for the green zones. Is there anything else we should be considering and thinking about? And then I will stop talking and hopefully we can have a great discussion and Q&A.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll open it up to our directors. Do we have questions from our directors? Anyone?
Just way too much information.
Let's start with Director Tiksa.
I really appreciate the information and the graph. It is surprising, to see, our Live Oak to be have lower VMTs, considering 90% of the population works outside, the city limits, well over 90%. But again, since it makes sense, not you have a lot of people in the Sacramento area commuting to the Bay Area for work, so I guess it makes sense. But at the same time, looking locally, as in the infill projects, their green growth project, it would work so well in Live Oak with just certain areas. So I just want to mention that. I mean, it's great that we have a very low VMTs, but at the same time that there's certain just projects that would work very well, and Greensboro would be fantastic for our city because again, these projects would have cars driving less within our communities, and have people that come into our city will have less miles driven as well. Because again, it's all about instead of going around blocks, you can just cut through. And unfortunately, we would have to cut through our green zone area, which is an orchard. But again, it's simple things like that that I hope to see, working forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Director Frost.
So I just want to make sure I understand when you're talking about identifying green zones, the green means go and these certain specific areas whereby it might be useful to have added investment in those areas that would encourage or help development. I'm assuming that's what this is all about. And is this like a are these areas that are identified going to then be, they'll then be identified as the first qualifying layer of properties or areas that would qualify for funding? Is that, am I understanding this? Or are we saying that in those areas we're going to actually do some added planning and work ahead of time that will, prepare these for someone to come in and be able to do something easier, more quickly. I guess I want to make sure I understand. I know at the local jurisdiction level, a lot of times we'll invest in things that it's like our investment into something that is taking a chance that someone will come along and say, wow, what a deal. They've already done the EIR and we can just move forward. Are you talking about funding in advance or positioning them for funding as projects are ready to go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what we're talking about is the green zones would be the areas that we're talking about. So within the larger infill map, we'll be asking local jurisdictions to sort of nominate their green zones. And again, I think the policy lens to those green zones is important, right? If what is the desire of the area in terms of like, is it an area that's planned for more growth? Does it have a specific plan? Is it trying to really accelerate the infill development of the entire area? So not one project, but can we, with investment, unlock an entire corridor or an entire portion of a community to have more development? So I do think the green zones, the idea is once they're established, they would be the areas that would be eligible for Green Means Go money if we get that funding from the state. And then that would be funds for things like we're talking about right now in terms of the water and sewer upgrades that would then alleviate, hopefully, a lot of the impact fees that any development along the corridor comes along and has to pay into, so that you can spur that development. So I wouldn't call it I think that the market does respond to that, right? When they see that, oh, this corridor has been upzoned and CEQA cleared and they've done the water and sewer upgrade. And so my fee is going to be more reasonable than trying to pay for an entire upgrade along a whole corridor. The market, I think, sees those things, and then you will start seeing that. But it's not going to happen quickly. It's going to take time for sure.
So it's like what we're putting together is a plan. It's basically focusing in on a plan that the jurisdictions participate in by virtue of selecting what is letting us SACOG know what their priority is for their specific areas that would qualify for this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and I know there was a meeting, I heard about a meeting that happened back in February, and I tried to go back and find the notes from the meeting, and then I got distracted, but I heard about a conversation around jurisdictional funding, and that there was some talk about having a conversation around what would be our different options as jurisdictions relating to how we would fund, how we would take our funding, and how we would, how we would plan projects and move forward with projects. And I know I had a conversation with Jeff Slowey, and there was a request that this was going to come back to the board, and it seemed like a fairly large conversation, since it would make a difference. It would probably make a huge difference in the way whether we compete for money or we just have our money that we can then decide how we're gonna stay, consistent with the MTP SCS and maximize the funding that we have, versus do we go business as usual, which might have an impact on something like Green Means Go. And so my question is, when is that coming to the board? Because it seems like that should be a conversation that we would have either alongside Green Means Go or before we make a final decision on that. I mean, it seems like that would be like the very first conversation we should be having, just working our way through, because that will impact maybe how we look at that. That could very well impact, at least for the county, how we look at our funding and what we can do with it.
Director Frost, if I can, yes, you're raising what Director Slowey has raised, which I know it's a topic of conversation right now about the SACOG funding round of the 4 counties, and that is coming to the Transportation Committee on May 7th for a policy conversation. I think we're going to take that to all 3 committees. I need to check on that because I know it's of great interest to many of you. And you're absolutely right. It relates to this topic as well. We're trying to provide some options to the board after getting some of your feedback on May 7th, because we have the funding round, but we also have some housing planning money right now that's coming to the region, those so-called REAP funds. And we'd like to try to, when we say place-based strategy, we'd like to try to direct some of those planning funds into those green zones that really need some planning help to get ready for projects. So May 7th in the Transportation Committee, I think it's going to come. I'll confirm that to the other committees. It will be Lunar on May 7th as well.
So can it come to all the committees? Because I think I would like to have that come to the Lunar Committee also, if it's okay with you and Matt Spokley.
Clint, do you know if we're coming to all 3 committees with it?
I believe it is on the agenda for all 3.
Yes, it
There
is.
you go. You have your answer.
Thank
all
you.
3.
Certainly support that as well. So thank you for that, James. Thank you, Director Frost.
Chair Spokley, I do have, I believe, a board member I'm going to allow to talk right now. They have their hand raised.
Perfect, please.
Okay. If a board member just joined the committee, you are allowed to talk at this moment.
I've been on the meeting. I just my phone hung up and I just rejoined, so I don't have my hand up.
Gotcha.
This is Andrika.
Okay. I do have one question for you, Jennifer or James, whoever can answer it. I know that we have been attempting to get the attention of the legislature here in Sacramento to fund this program. Do we have any updates on where we're at with the funding for the Green Means Go program?
Sure. Well, we've been making a pretty major push this year in the legislature. We had a proposal that we thought was pretty clever. We were taking existing grant programs at the state level that our region sometimes has a hard time competing for. And the proposal was to kind of commingle those programs, bring to the regional level, and use that to, for some money in the green zones. That was going quite well. We got good feedback from the administration, governor's office. We got good feedback from a lot of our meetings. Our delegation, entire delegation, sent a letter to the governor asking for this to get funded in the budget. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. So we are not giving up by any means. And if there is any money in a budget, it looks like they'll kind of do maybe a basic budget by June 15th. And there may be some trailer bills and some opportunities. So our job just got a bit harder on Green Means Go at the state level. But as I mentioned in the setup to this conversation, we think there's other planning money, stimulus money, recovery money that's going to be also coming. The green zones, if we can get them set up appropriately, I think could be competitive for, in addition to any kind of Green Means Go funds. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. We're still trying, it sounds like.
We're still trying, absolutely.
Director Frost.
So in the staff report, you mentioned that you would be seeking input in several different areas. How big a geography should the green zone be? Should it be aligned with existing planning boundary? How shovel ready? Who can nominate the green zone? How many green zones can a jurisdiction nominate? Who can nominate green zones? And so I guess I wanted to say that I think one thing that is important to each jurisdiction is that each of us are so different. And so what's really good for Sacramento might be different in an unincorporated county versus the rural areas. And we have different needs. And so I think the fact that you are having the jurisdictions nominate the green zones and be an integral part of that is good. And I think, you know, as far as identifying green zones, I don't know how everyone else on the committee feels, but I think we should identify all of them. I mean, but I know we all have a certain amount of funding that we're hoping, you know, we qualify for based on our jurisdiction, which there's going to be limitations there. So if one has more green zones, but they don't have that much funding coming, they could maybe then which ones are going to be most beneficial to move forward with at what time, and who stepped in and was ready to be shovel ready or invest or whatever to make something happen. And I think it's really important that each jurisdiction is engaged to try to figure out, okay, I know this whole air quality, the 19%, and you know the goals are ambitious, and if we can find a way that the different jurisdictions can fulfill their needs and at the same time maximize what we can, you know, deliver to the MTP results that we're trying to get at, that will make us so much better. And so involving the jurisdictions in these decision-making processes, I think is really important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Frost. Any other comments from the directors? All right, Jennifer, thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
We are at the end of our agenda, just in time. I've got a 3 o'clock coronavirus call I got to get on. Do we have any other matters for this committee?
Right. Chair Spokley, I would like to get one quick gut check from the committee members. As you know, Cap to Cap has been postponed like everything else. They have new dates, September 8th to 12th. That's the week of Labor Day. We were planning to do that pre-tour of suburban Virginia and really cool commercial corridor infill projects. Looking at trying to figure out how we might fit that into that September timing. If we did, it would be the Tuesday, the beginning of that week, the 8th, which means you would have to fly on the 7th on Labor Day. Any quick reactions to that, whether you're going, whether you'd still like to try to make it work?
I certainly have.
On Dirko here. Go ahead, Spokley.
I certainly have an interest in going, but there are a lot of variables calendar-wise, so I've got an interest. Director Anderko?
I share that same position. I do want to go, but I think there's, you know, let's see how the next 45, 60 days goes, and I think we'll be in a better position to recalibrate then.
I was signed up to go. I couldn't wait to go, and that date that they're going to Cap in September falls on a budget hearing week, and I am unfortunately not able to attend. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
This is Director New, and I now would be looking at the new dates to see if that would be possible for me to attend.
Director Gallardo?
Yes, I am, was planning on going. I definitely am planning on going again. And one of our, with the new dates, one of the council members, Councilmember Broadway, it looks like he'll be able to attend. If I had a preference for the tour, it would be after, just because I have a conflict on Labor Day. But other than that, I will be there.
Great. All righty. Thank you, everybody. Lynette, Clint, thanks for setting us all up. James, appreciate it.
Good to see you all.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks for your hard work.
Our next
Thanks,
meeting is
everyone.
Thursday, May 7th. I have a hunch we'll be doing another Zoom meeting then. So we'll see y'all then. Everybody have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.